Hi, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Gentleman Game Designer, and I'm here to teach you everything I know about how to design tabletop games. In this week's video, we will dive deeper into what motivates players. There are many frameworks that help us think about player motivations, but over the next few videos, we will base our study of player motivation on Quantic Foundry's Gamer Motivation Model. The Quantic Foundry Gamer Motivation Model covers 6 clusters of motivations. These are action, social, mastery, achievement, immersion, and creativity. Each cluster contains 2 motivations, which are related and somewhat interdependent, making up 12 motivations in total. Each of these motivations sits on a spectrum that ranges from low to high. You can download a PDF of the model from Quantic Foundry's website, linked in the description below. So in a past video, we talked about the concept of player drive and how desire chains develop into decisions made by players. Today, we will talk about where the Quantic Foundry model comes from, who researched and invented the model, and the first 2 clusters of the model, the action and social clusters. Today's video is all about destruction, excitement, competition, and community. You're not going to want to miss this, so stick around and stay tuned. Before we dive into the model, I have a minor announcement. You may have noticed a few changes. I recently moved into a new place and set up a new studio here. I've also upgraded my microphones, so hopefully we can get much cleaner audio going forward. Please leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of the new setup. All right, now let's get back into it. So who is Quantic Foundry? Well, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, these 2 game design nerds got together, and one nerd said to the other nerd, "You know, a lot of people think they know what players want, but how do we actually know?" And then the other nerd replied, "Well, what if we ask them what they want and then watch what they do and write it down? Then we'll know." These 2 nerds, these legends, are Nick Yee and Nicholas Ducheneau. They started their research by data mining people's activities in World of Warcraft. Then they analyzed that data and wrote some papers on it. Then they data mined some other games and wrote some other papers on that. After that, they went on to lead the Gamer Behavior Research Group at Ubisoft. Thus, the Nicks of Quantic Foundry have done a lot to quantify, validate, and sometimes challenge what we think motivates players in online games. The Quantic Foundry Gamer Motivation Model covers 6 major clusters of motivations. These are action, mastery, social, achievement, immersion, and creativity. Each cluster contains 2 motivations, which are related and somewhat interdependent, making up a total of 12 motivations. When we zoom into the action cluster, we see that it contains 2 motivations inside of it: destruction and excitement. Each of these motivations exists on a spectrum from low to high. For excitement, this ranges from calm to thrilling, and for destruction, from enduring to chaotic. On the low end of excitement, you have calm gameplay. Calm here meaning that players have ample time to respond to their environment. Gameplay can be paused at any time. Sensory stimulation is low. Think about a day out at the spa or a nice hike in the mountains. The other end of the spectrum is thrill. In a video game, this is usually fast-paced and provides a constant element of surprise and movement. There are a lot of things happening around the player. It's the explosions, the gunfights, it's the collapsing bridge, the enemies chasing you down. It's the thing that says, surprise, anything can happen here. You should be on your toes at all times. The player has no choice but to react. Here we see that this spectrum is based on how fast the player feedback cycles are. In your game, is the play turn-based or is it live action in real time? How long does the player have to react to their environment? Think back to the concept of decision cadence, which I covered in a previous video on player behaviors and goals. you can go watch that video here. As a reminder, decision cadence is how often the player is given a chance to make a decision. Can they make decisions on other players' turns? How long do the turns take? How do you keep a player engaged when it isn't their turn? Do you make your game fast-paced and thrilling like Panic on Wall Street by Britton Rooney? Or do you reach for something calm and quiet like Terraforming Mars by Jacob Frazelius? The destruction spectrum ranges from enduring, where no destruction occurs, to chaotic, where destruction and chaos rain down all around the player. Think of Animal Crossing versus Doom Eternal. It's so perfect for one another. I'll never get over it. In a tabletop context, we are talking about a spectrum between a game like Agricola, where players are each independently working towards the goal of building the best farm, versus a game like Warhammer 40k, where near endless dice pool unleashes total destruction on the battlefield. You might be surprised to learn this, but destruction doesn't require a mature theme like warfare to be successful. Consider a game like Terror in Meeple City by Antoine Bauza. This is a family-friendly game where the players are monsters destroying a city. The destruction of the city is the goal, but the theming of that destruction makes it fun and lighthearted enough that even young children can participate. Perhaps the greatest feeling of destruction I've seen in games is somewhere around the middle third of a game of Twilight Imperium. This is where tension tends to be tightest in the game, and where attacks and betrayals start to show themselves. The cracks start to form, and suddenly an alliance splits and a war is declared between two or more players, and all your plans are gone because the game state has suddenly shifted beneath your feet and you find yourself in a new position. Maybe you can take advantage of the situation, or maybe you are now more vulnerable than ever. This kind of destruction is more subtle. It's the destruction of your sense of safety itself. Before we get into the social cluster, I want to talk to you about the future of this channel. The best way you can help this channel grow is just by helping us get the word out there. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you like what you see. And please share this video with all your friends on social media. Remember, sharing is caring. Starting a YouTube channel is expensive, and it takes a lot of time to produce quality educational content. I want to make this channel special. In order to grow this channel at the rate I want to, I need to raise some money. As game designers, we tend to amass extensive collections of games and gaming-related artifacts. I am fortunate enough to own an extensive library of games and rare trading cards. So to help fund this channel, I'm going to sell most of my gaming collection at an online auction. Though I am keeping my 18xx games. Sorry, you can't have those ones. If you'd like to support the Gentleman Game Designer financially and get a shot at something from my collection, please register on auctionohio.com today. Registration is completely free. My auctioneer is licensed and regulated by the state of Ohio, and she ships throughout the entire continental United States. The auction will be held online from March 18 until April 8. Auction registration information is in the description down below. On April 4th, I will launch a mini Kickstarter campaign to fund the development of a 12-episode storytelling and tabletop game design series for this channel. The goal of this campaign is really small, and it's just to make it so that we can get through the next couple months. Please consider signing up for our newsletter to be reminded about the upcoming campaigns. Details are in the description below. All right, now back to the show. The next cluster of motivations is the social cluster, which contains two motivations: competition and community. Each of these two motivations exist on a spectrum from low to high, and while being related to one another, they are each independent. For competition, the spectrum ranges from non-adversarial indirect conflict to high conflict direct conflict. For community, this varies from independence to teamwork. First, let's dive into the community motivation. On the low end, you have independence. Players act alone or are in full control of every character. For example, consider the God game genre, where players can even control the weather. That said, the independent side of the spectrum is most obviously and most commonly seen in single-player role-playing games. Think of Oblivion, Skyrim, The Witcher. On the high end of community, you have teamwork. Players are working together with other players to achieve a goal. This might be against another team of players or even against the game itself. The fate of the players will often be tied to how well they can work together as a team. Consider the genre of escape rooms, where players have to work together to solve a series of puzzles in order to escape. In tabletop games, we see extreme independence in games like Friday by Friedemann Friese, which is a solo adventure card game where you, the player, are trying to get a stuck sailor who can't seem to feed himself off your island. And yes, it is a game called Friday by a guy named Fry Fry, and yes, Friedemann Friese is aware of the joke. He's the one who made it. So quick aside, Friedemann Friese is one of my all-time favorite game designers. His trademark is simple. He always wears green, he likes the letter F, and his goal is to make you laugh and have fun. And that is why Friedemann Friese is this episode's Gentleman Game Designer's Distinguished Game Designer Award winner, which is an award I just made up, and it is completely based on a biased and totally unfair and absurd point system, which I also just made up. I'm a game designer, I can do that. Thank you, Friedemann, for all the great games you've made. Now back to the program. On the other side of community is teamwork. In tabletop, this can be as simple as having a partner in a game like Spades or Euchre. Or it can be an entire faction of players against another faction of players. Sometimes these factions are hidden or can even shift throughout the game. Think about the teamwork required in a social deduction game like Werewolf, where villagers are trying to find and stop a team of werewolves that keep killing villagers at night. The only problem is that no one will admit they are a werewolf. So how do you catch them? Teamwork and raw luck, that's how. Community motivation can also be extended far outside and beyond the game. As designers, we sometimes forget, but we need to consider the entirety of the player experience. Are there fan web forums where gamers talk strategy about your game? That is part of the community experience. Are there guilds inside the game that players self-organize around? That's part of the community experience. Are there tournaments where players compete against each other and help each other achieve greater personal gains? Think about games like Magic the Gathering. What really is behind the staying power of that game? The sense of community that comes with Magic the Gathering is as powerful, if not more powerful, than any new mechanics Wizards could possibly come up with. The community is what makes that game and other trading card games like it such a powerful gaming experience. As they say, the game is in the meta, which just means the game is in the community. The other side of the social coin is competition. This spectrum is one of conflict. Single-player solo and multiplayer solitaire games can be found on the low end of the conflict competition scale. Multiplayer solitaire is a subgenre of Eurogames where you are competing against your opponents for points, but where your ability to affect your opponent's gameplay is limited by indirect conflict. For example, in a game like Agricola, each player is working on their own farm. My farm is mostly separate from your farm. However, the game has many community spaces where we're competing to gather resources. If I can get my resources before you get yours, I can ensure I get what I need to accomplish my goals, but I also get to deny you what you might need to complete yours. This kind of indirect conflict is also evident in drafting games like Seven Wonders by Antoine Bauza, where players are building their own solitary empires and where some direct conflict occurs between neighbors and where indirect conflict occurs everywhere. Now, why in Seven Wonders do we have indirect conflict everywhere? This is because Seven Wonders is a card drafting game. And in card drafting games, I'm allowed to draft a card that I don't need, but that I know that you do, which means I can affect your gameplay by denying you the card that you need by drafting it before you can. By contrast, at the high end of this competition spectrum, you have direct conflict in high conflict games. This is where the conflict is much more head-on and straightforward. Think of games like Counter-Strike and Overwatch, where players are literally, yes, Chris, literally trying to kill the players on the opposing teams. In games like Warhammer 40k, the goal is total genocidal destruction of the opponent's forces. It doesn't get any more direct. In tabletop games, we see direct conflict most evidently in tabletop war games, like the Ancients or Napoleonic wargaming series of games by various game designers throughout the years. And of course, most trading card games and most two-player abstract games are designed as direct conflict games between two players or two groups of players. An interesting case study on conflict in games comes from the Coin series, published mainly through GMT Games, starting with Andean Abyss by Volker Ruhnke, and brought into the mainstream with Root by Cole Wehrle. The Coin series is best described as a complex game of levers with geopolitical implications. Every decision you make matters, and every decision is life or death. These games are notable for expressing direct conflict between players, but have mechanics which force indirect conflict as the only means for players to accomplish their goals and objectives. If you want a taste of what coin and geopolitical games feel like, then I recommend you try Watergate by Matthias Kramer, and is published by Capstone Games. And if you find you like that, then you can graduate to 13 Days, and then Twilight Struggle, and then finally, I recommend you play Cuba Libre or Andean Abyss. Coin is a fantastic series, and it is, frankly, going to blow your mind. But it is a great study of conflict in games, and it is something I think every game designer should investigate. As you can see, the Quantic Foundry Gamer Motivation Model is a great way to think about how players are motivated in games. In next week's video, we're going to cover mastery and achievement. Sign up for our newsletter in the description down below. Consider joining our Discord community, and please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends online. Thank you for hanging out until the end, and a special thanks to my paid patron subscribers. Mike, Kathleen, and Christian, thank you all for being here from the very beginning. To everyone, good luck, have fun, now go make some games.